Okay, ladies and gentlemen, period 6, IB year 2. What's up, guys? How's it going? Mr. Din here once again, broadcasting from Koreatown. Hopefully you guys are doing okay. Dodgers look pretty good. One win away from winning the World Series. Any of you are baseball fans out there? You guys have completed the ecology unit, but we haven't yet discussed how the environment has any effect on the organisms on the planet. Now, we kind of touched on it with the food webs and such, but what we're going to do now is we're going to add a new dimension to our studies, and I'm very, very excited. The new dimension is time. How do organisms change over time as a result of the environment they're in? And this study of organisms' life with time is the study of evolution. And so I am very, very excited to begin our new unit on evolution. That's the one half of it, and the other half of our unit is called biodiversity. Okay, this unit's pretty simple. How do organisms change over time? And how do we classify organisms on the planet? The first half, we're going to show you all how to classify organisms on the planet. And the second half, we're going to say, well, don't these organisms change with respect to time? And the answer is yes. Yes, they do. That's called evolution. And so with all that in mind, please take out your bills and turn to page 24 and page 25. On page 25, we're going to talk about kingdoms of life today. So we're going to try to classify the hundreds of thousands of organisms living on the planet. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to stop that share. And I'm going to share with you the agenda for today. It looks something like this. So I always start this unit with a poll on evolution. This poll is going to happen during our Zoom session this week. So I really want to get a feel for what you guys think about evolutionary theory, because sometimes evolutionary theory can be in direct conflict to the way you guys grew up. Okay. Number 2 is I'm going to post some really quick community circle questions for you all to start thinking about evolution. Number 3 is I'm going to show you a video of something called a pangolin. The pangolin is an organism that you may not have ever seen before. This organism is the most highly trafficked organism on the planet. Number 3, we're going to do a quick thought experiment on kingdoms of life. The instructions will be on Schoology. And finally, 2 more things. I'm going to do a small explanation today on kingdoms of life. Shouldn't take that long. And then I'm going to introduce the unit-long project, which is called a Pokédex at the very end. Okay, I'm going to stop that share. And I'm going to share with you our piece of paper. It looks something like this. The goal of the day today is at the end of this lesson, I really want you all to walk away understanding the 5 kingdoms of life. You take all the living organisms on the planet, and we can classify them into 5 basic kingdoms. Okay. Now, let me check something really quick. Give me 1 second here. Okay. I don't know what I've done with my final copy of these notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what this looks like on my computer so you know what the end product of these notes are going to look like. They look something like this. See? You can even you can pause the video and write these notes down before I do it with you. If not, you can just follow along. And here we go. So by the end of today, we're going to talk about how to classify the organisms into 5 kingdoms. We're going to talk about the 3 domains of life. And finally, we're going to break down the kingdom into its individual parts. Okay, stop that share. And I'm going to go back here. Here we go. Okay. Ta-da. Let's talk today about domains and kingdoms. This will go on page 25 of your bills, and this is for IB. You guys are cohort number 6. It might be a good idea before we get any further to write down the goals of the day today. How about we do that? Here they are. I'm going to read them out loud. You can pause and write them down. Number 1 is I'm going to explain to you something called the binomial system of names for species decided upon by a group of congresses. So the way we classify organisms right now is something called the Linnaean classification. And I'm going to show you what the Linnaean classification is. Number 2, all organisms are classified using a hierarchy of taxa and 3 domains. We're going to talk about the taxa, and we're going to talk about the 3 domains. Number 3, we are going to break down the taxa of eukaryotes into kingdoms, phyla, class, order, family, genus, and species. So K, P, C, O, F, G, S. Those are the 3 goals. Write them down into your bills just above our notes today. Okay. With that said, let's get going. I'm going to split the page like this. So we have like 3 comic book panels, one right here, one right here, one right here. Okay. We started this by introducing you to something called the kingdoms of life. There are 5 kingdoms. You take all the organisms on the planet, you put them into one zoo. How do we classify all of these organisms? Most of these you already know. Kingdom number 1 is Animalia. Underneath each of these kingdoms, I'm going to put a few special properties of every kingdom that the organisms within that kingdom share. All organisms in kingdom Animalia are multicellular. This should make sense. They're eukaryotic organisms. They must be multicellular. Animal cells are quite large. They are so large they can be seen on scanning power. This term, scanning power, was way back a year ago when we were talking about microscopes, if you remember. Kingdom number 2 is Kingdom Plantae. Kingdom Plantae has cell walls. That is one way it's different from an animal cell. Plants are also multicellular, and they're quite large, just as large as an animal cell. Kingdom 3 is called Monera. Monera is another way of saying bacteria. Some bacteria have cell walls. Oh gosh, I haven't been ringing the bell, have I? 1, 2, 3. Monera are single-celled, unicellular. And they are quite small, very small cells. The fourth kingdom is called Protista. Now, Protista is kind of a combination between all three of these other kingdoms. I'll show you why. Most Protista are single-celled. However, they can consume like an animal. They can also consume like a plant. Some are photosynthetic, some are heterotrophic. An example of a protista we talked about before is called a paramecium. Paramecium is this football-shaped protist. It's only one cell big, but it consumes like a heterotroph. It needs to eat other single-celled organisms to get its carbon. The last kingdom of life is kingdom fungi. I wish we had more time to talk about the fungi. Fungi are super, super interesting. There's so many different types of fungi. They are multicellular. Their cells are fused together. So each cell is multicellular. I'm sorry, each cell is multinucleated is the word I was looking for. Do you remember about a year ago when I introduced to you something called afungal hyphae? Afungal hyphae was an exception to the cell theory because it was multinucleated, many nuclei within one cell. That was an example of a fungus. These cells are also quite large and they can be seen in scanning power. One for protista, one for fungi. A broader note for the kingdoms of life. It is a misconception that human beings are above nature. It is also a misconception that human beings must find ways to control nature. Just because human beings are part of kingdom Animalia doesn't mean that we are above the animal kingdom, and the animal kingdom is not above the plant kingdom. All organisms on the planet share this planet. In fact, animals cannot survive if it wasn't for bacteria. Just look at your digestive systems. Within your digestive systems are bacteria that help you digest food. This idea that humans are above nature has caused a lot of problems in the modern day. So we have to update. We got to get rid of that idea. There's an old movie. I suggest you all see it. I'm going to write it down here. It's called War of the Worlds. I believe it was, I forget who wrote the book, but it was a movie with Tom Cruise most recently, and it's a movie about an alien invasion. And spoiler alert, the aliens are just defeated, but not by human beings. Check out the movie. It'll give you a greater appreciation for the organisms on our planet. Okay, those are the kingdoms of life. So then what are the domains of life? Okay, domains and kingdoms are a little bit different. Domains are broader, kingdoms are a little more specific. So let's talk about the kingdoms of life. I'm sorry, the domains of life. These domains I'm sure you're quite familiar with. If you think of life as a tree, and the tree begins here, down there, and it kind of branches in 3 directions, these 3 directions are the domains of life. The first is eukarya. So the kingdoms Animalia, Plantae, fungi, and Protista are all branches of the eukarya domain. Prokarya is the root of where the Monera come from. Prokarya are single-celled, and they have no membrane-bound organelles, such as the nucleus. They have instead something called a nucleoid. You may remember this from nearly a year ago. 2 rings, domain eukarya and domain prokarya. So what is this other domain? This is a very old type of cell that I've introduced to you before, archaea. Archaea are the oldest organisms among us, billions and billions of years before man ever set foot on other continents. The archaea are the first to evolve. You can think of them as the forerunners of life. They are single-celled, and they're not gone. They're still among us. They're in swamps, hydrothermal vents. The problem is you only find them in very extreme conditions. So you wouldn't find them just kind of lying around your house. You find them in extremes of temperature, extremes of salt concentration, extremes of pH, extremes of oxygen or lack thereof, etc., etc., etc. They are the most durable of the organisms, the most durable of the domains. They've just been around for a long time. Okay. We can further break down this classification of the kingdoms of life. We know the domains are the broadest, and we know the kingdoms are underneath that. But then how can we further classify organisms beneath a kingdom? Because there are thousands of animals, thousands of plants, millions of bacteria, etc., etc. How do we further classify? The system we use comes from a man named Carolus Linnaeus. So the classification we use is called Linnaean taxonomy. The broadest of Linnaean taxonomy is the kingdom. Beneath that is a phylum. Beneath that is a class. Beneath that is an order. Beneath that is a family, a genus, and a species. So how many rings? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The way you can define these is pretty simple. A phylum is a more specific category beneath a kingdom. A class is a more specific category of a phylum, etc., etc. The most specific taxa that we can assign to an organism is its species. And the way we write the species is we write the genus name first, Homo sapiens. Notice the genus name is capitalized, but the species name is not. So our species is called sapiens. Our genus is called Homo. Homo sapiens. Genus, species. And these two words are actually italicized when you write it on paper. Okay. How can you remember the order of general to very specific when it comes to Linnaean taxonomy? The way I remember is keep pond clean or fish get sick. 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 Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Keep pond clean or fish get sick. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the domains of life, the kingdoms underneath them, and finally, the taxa underneath the kingdoms till you get to the most specific. So I think if we were to do this with human beings as an example, let me just say it out loud. Animalia, chordata, what's the class? Mammalia, I think? Yeah. Order, don't remember. Family, I think is, oh wait, order is hominin. Family is, I forget, and then Homo and then species. Oh, Homo and then sapiens. Yeah, so those are human beings. Let me just look it up right now because I don't want to. Full taxonomy for humans. Let's write it down. It is Animalia, chordata. Chordata because we have a spinal cord. Chordata. Mammalia because we're mammals. Primates. Primates is our order. Family is hominid. Genus is Homo. And finally, species is sapiens. And you can do this with any organism. Okay. So I'm going to stop that share. And I'm going to quickly summarize domains, kingdoms, and Linnaean taxonomy. Once again, this is the start of our unit on biodiversity and evolution. So I hope you guys found this video informative. If you did not, go back and watch it, or you can also message me on Schoology. Hopefully the Dodgers win the World Series. We'll see. This is Mr. Din from Koreatown. Over and out. Buzz.